Hello coders and welcome to another How to Code Well podcast. Today's topic is extremely important. We're going to be talking about mental health in web development. And I'm joined here by Matt Trask, who is a speaker, maintainer at PHP Versions and OpenAPI. Matt is also a volunteer at OSMI, which is open sourcing mental illness, as well as a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. Hi, Matt. How's it going? Have you had a good week?
Hey, Peter. It's going well. It's been one of those weeks where it's so close to Friday that I can feel it, but it's not there just yet.
No, almost. Just a couple more hours.
just a few more hours.
Well, you're in Nashville, aren't you?
I am. I think I'm 5 or 6 hours behind you.
Yeah. So maybe a few more hours for you.
Yeah, like 11.
Yeah.
It'll fly by. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So, PHP Versions. What is PHP Versions?
Yeah, so PHP Versions was a project started by a guy named Phil Sturgeon. And basically, for the longest time, we have had a huge issue in our community where hosts just don't want to upgrade their PHP versions. They'll have older versions, out-of-date versions, end-of-life versions, things like that. And so he made a project to kind of essentially name and shame hosting companies to start giving them a reason to upgrade, and also give developers options to say, hey, hosting company A is only offering 5.3, hosting company B is doing 5.6.
I like that.
And so
yeah.
we can kind of point to which hosting companies are doing or offering the right version of PHP.
Yeah.
And it's kind of evolved from there. I took it over about 2 years ago. And in that time, we kept it as a Jekyll project, which is a Ruby-based kind of static CMS.
Mm-hmm.
But we're finally starting to move it away from that and onto PHP. I did it with Laravel and Vue.js, and brought on Colin O'Dell, another maintainer, to kind of maintain the old project while I found time to write the new project. So we're kind of at like critical stage where we can start pushing people over.
Yeah.
But it's just this fun little small project that I took over and hope to grow it and get more people using it this year.
Yeah, I guess with all the PHP 7 versions, it's, you've got more work to do because, after PHP 5.6 and so forth, it was, we just had the incremental changes, but then we had the big gap between that and 7. Yep. And there's quite a lot of change in 7. Quite a lot of change. Yeah. So that sounds
go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, from like 5.6 to 7 was a good change. Now from 7.3 into 7.4 is probably going to be the next biggest change we see. And so it's really fascinating to kind of highlight like which companies are willing to go to the bleeding edge first.
Yeah.
In order to offer developers the best experience. So I'm really excited to see how that happens in the wintertime.
I really dig this project because there's often I will spin up a VPS somewhere and then discover that they don't actually have this installed or this particular version installed. And so I sort of revert back to the Docker where I've got complete control. But especially from a shared hosting perspective as well, that's really interesting because that is a complete hit and miss as to what is on offer there. Yeah. So yeah, really digging that project. Sounds really good. And you're also a maintainer at OpenAPI as well. And you spoke about this at Sunshine PHP, where I actually met you at Miami this year. So what is OpenAPI?
So I maintain a project called OpenAPI.tools.
Right.
I'm involved with the bigger OpenAPI project in that I evangelize it, but I'm definitely not one of those.
Okay.
The people who do that are 10 times as smart as I will ever be. And they are some of the giants in our industry, and I really look up to them. The project I do is just OpenAPI.tools. It's another Phil Sturgeon project. Basically, my career is littered with ideas Phil came up with that I run with. And so basically the idea is that as OpenAPI became a thing and hit version 3.0 and is now a wider use specification, we wanted to highlight which tools support OpenAPI.3
Right.
and what you can do with them. Things like validators, transformers, documentation, things like that.
I see.
It's another simple kind of Jekyll self-hosted project, and we just accept pull requests from the community just to highlight, if you're coming to OpenAPI and you want to know what tools to use, it's a quick reference look at what's out there.
Okay. Yeah. I'm digging that too. That's I'm feeling a lot of Jekyll love. You use Jekyll.
It's for one-off projects that we tend to do to like just get information out there. It's really easy to spin up a Jekyll thing and just get the information out really fast.
Yeah.
And then if it blows up like PHP versions, we can kind of step back and say, okay, now what do we actually need to do to turn this into a real live application? One of the ironic things was that for the longest time, since Jekyll was Ruby, there was a sweet irony of a PHP project on Ruby instead of being on PHP itself and using everything that we're trying to talk about. So, if you're trying to just do a quick website, something Jekyll's great. And then if it takes off, you can step back and turn it into a real thing or what have you.
And what's the URL for that again? You did mention that. What is it for OpenAPI?
It's openapis.tools.
Openapis.tools. Okay, I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
So let's dive in to the open sourcing mental illness aspect of this podcast episode, because I think this is extremely important stuff. First of all, what is open sourcing mental illness?
So open sourcing mental illness was an organization started by a guy named Ed Finkler. I want to say about 6 or 7 years ago. The whole premise was that he was dealing with a lot of different things in his life: depression, anxiety, ADHD, and things like that. And he hosted a podcast called Dev Hell with a friend of ours, Chris Hartjes, and he just asked Chris if he could have the podcast to talk about all the things going on in his life. And it turned out that the outpouring was so great and so overwhelming for Ed that he felt the need to create an organization. So he started Open Source Mental Illness. And very quickly it attracted some pretty big names of our community, Joe Ferguson being one of them. And it's an organization where we aim to kind of, in a multifaceted way, get the information out to people in terms of what employers, employees, human resources, and things like that can do with mental health in the workplace, especially because it's an American organization. So our healthcare is amazing as it is. What are your rights under like the Americans with Disabilities Act and things like that with regards to mental health? And so we have some brochures and some books that we've written in conjunction with trained psychologists and psychiatrists that we give out for free for employers, employees, and HR to kind of understand how everything works together.
I see. Okay. That sounds like there is a lot of people involved with this, because there's so many different avenues of mental health. You mentioned that there is the people who have the specialists within the industry. You've got people who are writing books. You've got people who are speaking. So yeah, it does sound like there's a whole gang of people. Do you know how many people there are involved in this organization?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because so before last week, there's actually another group called Mental Health Prompt.
Okay.
Also kind of doing the same thing that we were doing. And last week we combined our powers together to create one large mental health organization now. So now, I think last time I checked, our Slack channel has about 60 people or so.
Wow.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Like people come and go as they can. There's no hard fast, you need to give X amount of talks or donate X amount of time or write X amount of blog posts. We all kind of just,
right,
as we can do it, for the speakers, as we get accepted. the board is about 5 or 6 people, and that's where the clinical staff sits.
Right.
Because it's most important to recognize that the speakers, that as we're doing this, we're not medical professionals.
No,
we're just sharing experiences.
Right.
But it is important to know that we do have people on staff who have degrees and doctorates and things like that on staff to help us understand that the information we have is being presented in a correct and professional way.
Yeah, because I guess it would be dangerous in some manner if you were to give out some wrong advice. The thing is, mental health is one of these massive, multi-faceted thing, massive spectrum, and it's something that I haven't spoken about on the podcast at all for fear of getting it wrong because my experience is not the same as everyone else's experience. People handle things and situations extremely differently. However, we all need to have some role models or some experience that isn't from ourselves that we can listen to relate to. And I think that a lot of the time, from my experience anyway, with mental health, I don't realize it until it's at the point where I need to realize it, if that makes sense. And listening to people who have similar experiences, I can then go, oh yeah, I'm actually on that path. So it's great to hear from people who have similar experiences, I think. So you say that there's people on the staff. It sounds like there's a lot of volunteers, though. Is that right?
We're all volunteers. I think maybe the only person who might draw any kind of salaries is Ed or Joe, and that's because they handle more of the finance, the paperwork, the office type stuff.
Yeah.
The most, I hate to use the word compensation because it's really not. The most that they'll do is that they'll buy plane tickets or hotels for us if we're speaking. And if I ask, I get stickers, or they might give me a hoodie, for free. Is like the one I'm wearing now is all ripped and damaged because I wear it so often. But it's purely driven by a volunteer group of people, kind of following the open source ethos that most of us also tend to contribute back to.
I dig that. I really do. Yeah, I like the open sourceness of that. It fits very well with talking and reviewing and all of that stuff with mental health. So how does one get involved in this?
So I got involved. I saw a tweet. I think it's been about 3 or 4. It would be about 3 years this summer. I saw a tweet about 3 years ago from Joe Ferguson asking for volunteers, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, but it's a great idea. And I fully expected just to be writing code for this organization, not speaking. But I mean, if other people want to get involved, there's a group of us on Twitter who are pretty well recognized with OSMI, Joe, myself, Ed, Jenna Quindica is another one, Nara Kasbergen from NPR. You can message us and we can help you get kind of create the link to Joe and Ed and everyone else through email, Twitter, if we're in a Slack channel, anything like that.
Right.
And it's all very low effort type stuff. Like, we're not going to ask you to do an application or anything. Just if you want to help out, we'll find uses for you, but it's pretty chill. Is there
any barriers to entry though? Is there anything that you need to have or do or be, do you have to be a developer, for instance, to do this?
Being a developer is not a thing, not a requirement at all. Most of us are developers, and most of us are friends just through our community efforts. I'm pretty sure we would not turn down anyone if they had any kind of psychological degree or anything, and they wanted to help us refine and hone our message and all that kind of stuff. I know that security, the security community is kind of going through a mental health revolution as well. So I know for a fact, if security people are hearing this and they're interested, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. Same thing with ops and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's one of these topics that I think a lot of these sort of sectors of the industry are sort of reviewing. Why do you think it's important to talk about it, though? What is the benefit of doing so?
The importance is it gives other people a sense of knowing they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
I had permission to share this on Twitter, so I feel pretty okay sharing this here. So I keynoted Midwest PHP earlier this month, and my talk was about mental health. And someone in the crowd sent me a message through my website, basically saying that everything I said resonated with him, and he was just checking off box after box after box as I was listing things. And he was like, I've never really known anyone else to go through the same thing I have, but I was so nervous to approach you because my boss was there, and I did not want my boss to see that he didn't want his boss to connect the dots.
I see.
Outwardly like that.
Okay.
Which kind of it makes perfect sense, but B, it also kind of took me back as a thing that still, I'm very lucky with my job. But it gives people they feel they're not alone anymore. My goal is if I can inspire one person in a room full of 200 not to feel alone, then I've done my job. And it helps start bringing things to light and allowing more people to have the conversation and feel safe about having the conversation.
Yeah.
To their friends, their family, coworkers, supervisors, and all that kind of stuff.
That sounds awesome. I like that, the fact that you're, the mentality you have of if you help 1 out of 100, then that is a way forward. I like that because it's very sort of, it's putting their needs first rather than, I dig that. It's really, really good. How, though, do you think, like you said that this chap reached out to you, how do you think it would affect what he was doing in a negative sense if he hadn't have reached out to you?
I don't necessarily know. It could go many different ways. With anxiety, there's always a prevalent fear of everything going wrong. And that's usually how I feel. A perfect case was this morning. I woke up around the early hour of 4 a.m. because I don't know why. I just did. It's fantastic. And I saw Slack had gone off, and there's a notice. And at first I thought it was my coworker just sending me something to laugh at, which is usually the case. But instead it was one of our coworkers from Romania. She was saying, hey, this is broken. We need to find a true fix, not a patch for it. But it was my work. It was my issue that I was working on. And so my brain started panicking, like, great, something's broken that I did. Is my boss going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing? All this kind of situation. So that's a prevalent fear of people with anxiety. So with this guy who emailed me, I don't know how severe his anxiety is, but it can truly prevent you from being good at your job, from really putting in the effort. If you're always afraid of being fired, if you're afraid of your boss talking to you and things like that. So the answer, the long-winded answer to your question is I don't truly know. His boss could have fired him for lack of performance when truly his boss may not know that he has things going on that affect his daily performance, and his boss could just shift mentalities or try and sit down. It's one of those things where 8,000 things could have happened and we just don't know.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's like when you're, because when something goes wrong in your case, you created this patch, but it wasn't a quote unquote true patch, true fix, but it was a fix. It's a difficult one because in our industry, things can be fixed in many, many ways. There isn't a single right way to do things, because there's all sorts of different impacts and different things that are impinging on the solutions that we find. And one solution might work one day and it might not work the next. I'm a freelancer. I go on and work on other people's projects. That is incredibly challenging sometimes, because I'm trying to work out how they've done it. And sometimes I fall into this imposter syndrome where I'm just so confused with what they're doing. And then I end up thinking, well, I should know this, right? This is what I'm employed to do. I should understand this. And, and so I think that the previous developer perhaps was a better grade than I was. I just go into that sort of mental sort of trip. And other times it's better and stuff. But it's also the way in which people word the issue as well, because I feel that things like Slack and email and all of those other things, they don't convey tone very well. And your head can sort of read that message and then interpret that very differently to how the person is actually feeling at the time. Because, if you're working remotely, you said that person was contacting you from far away, then you can't actually see their face. You're just seeing the words that they've written. And some people can be extremely brash, and they don't necessarily mean to. So it's a very interesting what you just said there about sort of navigating the waters and stuff with that. And I appreciate what you said about your experiences as well. That was really good. Do you think there's any additional challenges being in this industry, though, with mental health? Do you think that this industry that we're in, web development, coding, there is any additional thing that other industries don't have because of the stuff that we do in terms of mental health?
I think there is to a degree, although the more I talk to other people outside of coding, you talk to like doctors, they're always reading medical journals and things like that to stay abreast of research. Scientists are constantly doing the same thing. Teachers spend a lot of time outside of the classroom doing planning, grading, things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, at least for those, the 4 careers I just mentioned, I think we're about on par, maybe a little bit more than your average 40-hour-a-week person. However, I think what we're constantly having to do does in fact add a layer of stress. If you're if you're working a certain type of job, you might need to know X, Y, Z framework. Well, so let's say you just know PHP, you get a job, you need to learn Laravel, Vue. They might be using SAS or SCSS, whatever it's called these days. They might be using OpenAPI, which is a specification you need to learn. They might be using Postgres, which you never used. And so there is a kind of a blind expectation that you will spend time outside of work trying to level up your skills. And so I think that does contribute to a lot more people in web development being stressed, being cranky, being on edge, because while we may have time at work to learn these tools, we're also expecting to be productive and basically accounting for the amount of money we cost as developers for our salaries. So there's the expectation that you'll go home and spend more time on the weekends, on weeknights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that what we do it can be quite an isolated thing. I think that some of the offices I've walked through, everyone's just wearing headphones and not actually speaking to each other until they go into a meeting, and then they discuss a series of bugs and features, and then they go back into the development room and then put the headphones back on. Different places cope with that differently. But I think that, as a remote developer, it does get extremely lonely sometimes. And that I have to go out and seek people rather than they come here. I have clients that I will probably never see ever, because they live in places like Texas and stuff, where I haven't got any desire to go to right now. I might do if there was a conference popped up there or something, but I think that the work that we do can isolate you a little bit and detached from other aspects of everyday work and everyday life. You know, I have more conversations with my cat sometimes than I do with other devs. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying though. And you mentioned several industries there with doctors and nurses and stuff, and obviously they would have some level of I guess some of them at least would have some qualifications in mental health, right? And so they would be able to, well, some of them, not all of them, obviously, but they would have, I guess, some knowledge of work stress ish, whereas us web devs, perhaps we have to, I don't know, perhaps maybe I'm just thinking of myself where I'm the remote dev. Most of the time, my wife comes in and says, "You're stressed," rather than I know that I'm stressed. That's what I'm trying to get to. Whereas when you're a doctor, you prescribe people with stress, right? So,
sure.
Yeah. So that was kind of the point I was trying to make. But do you think, therefore, that when you have that knowledge, you should be able to speak more than the people who don't necessarily have that level of qualification about mental health? I mean, should
in a medical context, sure. Yeah. Like I'm not going to get on stage and diagnose anyone with any kind of mental health illness.
Right.
I'm smarter than that. Mm-hmm. And I know what the ramifications are because I have a brother who's a lawyer and he won't shut up about anything legal.
Right.
And he's not licensed to practice in the state I live in, so I have no protection. Mm. But you know, when I get on stage to share my mental health experiences, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm sharing my experiences. Okay. I'm sharing what it's like to live and battle things like anxiety and depression. But nowhere in my talk will I ever tell anyone, hey, if you're feeling moody, if you don't want to get out of bed, if doing mundane tasks like opening your email and cooking food are overwhelming to you, you probably have depression. I'm never going to outwardly tell anyone that type of thing. Right. And in fact, when I do speak, one of the first slides I throw up is a slide that says, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a college degree in anything. I have a student loans to prove I tried, but I don't actually have a degree. Excuse me. But so, you know, I never want to have anyone think I'm going to diagnose them or attempt to offer a diagnosis. I just share my experiences. And if it clicks with people, mm-hmm. then I encourage them. I'm saying, hey, if any of this clicks with you and it sounds familiar, then go see a doctor, go talk to somebody, mm-hmm. you know. Mm-hmm. I make it a point to tell people, you know, a lot of, at least in America, a lot of our insurance does cover a psychiatry appointment.
Right.
And you can use it with your insurance to go and see someone and talk to someone and let them make the professional diagnosis that they need to make.
Yeah.
Whether you do or do not have anything. So that's really what I try and do. I just share my experiences. I just, you know, because it also comes down to like, you know, I from my experiences, I can let managers know, hey, here's things that you may or may not do that suck. Mm-hmm. And maybe like, don't come to me at like Friday at 4:30 and say, hey, on Monday, let's talk.
Right.
Because all I'm going to do all weekend is wonder what did I screw up? Mm-hmm. And when really it's probably good news and you want to like give me a raise. In fact, like my boss actually did that. They know I have anxiety. They know I like stress over these things. Mm-hmm. And he took me out for beers one night after work. It was a Friday. He's like, it's like 4:00. He's like, hey, let's go get beers. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not going to turn that down. And we sit down, we talk for a little bit, and I'm like holding my beer. And he's like, so the reason I really wanted to bring you out here, and I'm just sitting here like, oh man, I'm about to get fired. Awesome. There's not he wanted to give me a raise. And he was like, they did that specifically to mess with me, and I get it. But you know, there's real world situations where people are like, hey, come see me tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's like a 5-minute meeting, and we like, hey, I just want to tell you like that Porter question was great. And it's like, you could have told me that last night. Like, so really, I'm just sharing experiences and letting people know from both sides, both as a developer in the wild and also my experiences with managers. Here's what sucks, here's what doesn't suck, and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
No one at a developer conference speaking about mental health should ever attempt to diagnose anyone with anything. And if they do, they deserve to be thrown out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely. I guess even if you are qualified in that sense, in the fact that you've got a certificate to say that you can diagnose and such, it doesn't mean that you can relate to that. Because, say for example, I've got a medical condition, and I know that my doctor will never have that medical condition, and yet he's able to diagnose me with that. So I guess there is two flips of the coin there, in that sense, because you, with these kind of things, these emotive things, you want to hear experiences. You can't just sort of get off the counter stuff and suddenly you're okay. It's a different state. Sometimes it takes a lot of life change, some changes of behavior, changes of routine, that kind of thing, and also trying to drill down to the root cause of all of this requires an element of communication. And I think that if you prevent people from speaking about this, then you are preventing the communication flow. You're preventing people in the audience from going, oh yeah, I can relate to that. But it's exactly what you said, though, the fact that just because you can talk and say something that might relate to someone doesn't mean that gives you the right to diagnose anybody with anything. That's a very good point that you make there. I think that is quite crucial. I can understand the perhaps the desire or need or want to sort of say, oh, have you thought that you've got X, or have you thought that you've got Y? But there is a danger to that. There is a sort of because the thing is that speakers are people that a lot of devs, all of us, look up to. And when we're being taught something on stage, sometimes we take that as gospel. That's because these brilliant people are talking about this fantastic technology. And so if you take that in the same context, or use that with the context of mental health, then there is that sort of possibility of dangerous self-diagnostic, I guess. So if someone is listening right now and they are feeling anxious and they are feeling like they are suffering from mental health, what is the first thing that they should do?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is make an appointment with a psychiatrist or psychologist in your area, and just have a talk with them. They are going to be the ultimate arbiter of, do you have something or do you not have something?
Yeah.
It's like the common case of going on WebMD and just like Googling sneeze, and next thing you know, you have cancer.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing that. Just have a talk with that. If you've already done that, and they determine that, like, yeah, you might have some anxiety, but drugs aren't really going to be a thing for you. Understand like what makes you feel that sort of way, and what can you do to prevent it. A very common thing with me, I have a really great friend named David Stanley. He's a manager dude over at Help Scout, great developer, awesome friend. Him and I will talk honestly and openly about a lot of different things. And anytime he can pick up on when my tweets and texts to him start getting a little bit like anxious, and he'll just tell me, he's like, go ride your bike. Because he knows, and I know, that if I go ride my bike for any period of time, I'm going to come back feeling better. That's kind of like my happy place. So like I have a way out, so to speak, where if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling panicky, I drop whatever, I do whatever I can to drop whatever I'm doing. I go put on my biking stuff and I just go ride for however long I want to ride. Same thing if like I feel like a bout of depression going on, especially in the winter, because the way time zones are set up in America, they're stupid. Nashville gets hit really hard. We lose the sun in the winter around 4 p.m. every day.
Right.
So, like I go to work when it's dark out. I sit in an office. I go home when it's dark out, so I can't do anything outside. So, like if I'm feeling that kind of way, there's vitamins I'll take, and I do whatever I can to find sunlight and be active, create activity to get my blood going. But it comes down to each and every single different person. What is making you anxious, and then how do you get to your happy place? And if you can figure out how to do that, you can ward off a lot of these kinds of things as well. But if you're hearing this for the first time and things are clicking for you, 100% go find a doctor, talk to them, and let them make the recommendations for you first and foremost.
Yeah, that's some good advice there. That's some really good advice. Yeah. This is a topic that I think that I would like to discuss further. Maybe talk about some experiences like you've done, and some really good experiences that you've mentioned. Because that's the thing, isn't it? You're talking about something that hopefully resonates with someone, but doing so in a sort of a very genuine, raw, not patronizing, not you need to do this, you need to do that, kind of manner. Just this is the story. This is how I got out of it. That kind of sort of thing. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll mention some stuff or do a series on this later. I'm actually quite inspired by what you guys do at the open sourcing mental illness, and I think it's a topic that needs to have more people talking about it in this industry. I really do. But I really do appreciate your time, Matt. Is there anything else that you want to cover? Anything you want to talk about?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. My Twitter DMs are wide open for anyone who wants to talk or message me. I get offers for like trading elephants to bikes to whatever. So you're more than welcome to message me on Twitter, and I will do my best to talk to you and do all that kind of stuff. You're always welcome to send me Star Wars gifts on Twitter. That's fun. We can like rage about the new ones and how they suck. I don't know.
What is your Twitter handle?
My Twitter is at Matthew Trask.
Right.
Is my main one, MattheWTrask. I also run the PHP Versions Twitter account as well when I remember to use it. And I have access to the OSMI one as well, but I don't really use that one all that much. But my main one's, my name, Matthew Trask. My DMs are open. You're welcome to shoot me a message. My website is matthewtrask.net.
Right.
And every so often I blog about mental health. I have one. I made a tweet last night about burnout and open source, and so I feel like I'm going to have a good blog post coming up here in the next couple of days, because the responses I got on Twitter were absolutely fascinating, and so I look to expound on those. Yeah, I'm always happy. I was happy you reached out to me. Really happy to come on here and talk. Look forward to hopefully doing it again. Another mental health one if you want to, or APIs and. Yeah, I mean the
PHP Versions Open API. I would love to pick your brains on all those kind of things in the future. So yeah, if you're happy to, then we'll get something in the diary. But thank you ever so much for coming on, Matt. I appreciate your time, and thank you ever so much, everyone, for listening on the podcasts or watching on the YouTubes. Thank you ever so much. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.